Tracy McGrady just warned the NBA about Victor Wembanyama, and his prediction begins with the most painful moment of San Antonio's season. McGrady believes the disappointment of losing the NBA Finals will push Wembanyama to kick it up another notch in 2026-27. But the real story is more complicated than saying Wemby simply played badly. He averaged 26 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.6 blocks against New York, yet the Spurs still lost in 5 games because his production did not consistently become control. By the end of this video, you will understand the 3 changes that can turn that disappointment into a dominant 4th season, why San Antonio's own championship history provides the perfect blueprint, and what must happen for McGrady's warning to become reality rather than another off-season prediction. McGrady's point was not that Wembanyama lacks talent or that one series exposed him as unprepared for the moment. It was that failure can become unusually powerful motivation when an elite player knows he left something unfinished. Wembanyama appears to understand that distinction. After Game 5, he called the defeat the biggest learning moment of his life, an important reaction from a 22-year-old who had just reached a stage most players never experience. He did not blame the officials, the roster, or his age. He recognized that the finals had presented questions San Antonio could not answer quickly enough. McGrady is betting that Wemby will spend the offseason finding those answers. Before accepting that prediction, however, we need to identify what actually went wrong, instead of allowing the final result to rewrite the entire series. The box score makes the criticism more nuanced. Wembanyama's 26 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.6 blocks per game would be an outstanding finals line for almost anyone, particularly at his age. The decline appeared in how hard he had to work for those numbers. He shot 42.3% from the field, 27.3% from 3, and recorded a 53.1% true shooting percentage after making 51.2% of his shots during the regular season. His workload also climbed from 29.2 regular season minutes to almost 40 minutes per game in the finals. Wemby was producing, but New York made that production expensive. The Knicks forced him to use more possessions, operate through more contact, and make decisions with less space. His performance was underwhelming relative to his standard, not evidence that he disappeared, and that difference reveals the first adjustment San Antonio must make. The finals were decided by control in the most important minutes. San Antonio repeatedly carried leads or momentum into closing stretches, only for New York to execute with greater precision when every possession became heavier. In Game 1, Wembanyama finished with 26 points and 12 rebounds, but he shot 6 of 21 and committed 6 turnovers as the Spurs surrendered home court advantage. In Game 5, he produced 19 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 blocks, yet shot 7 of 19, while New York controlled the 4th quarter and ended the series. Those games explain why strong averages can coexist with disappointment. The Spurs did not need Wemby to accumulate more highlights. They needed their best player to create a dependable answer when the offense slowed down. His first offseason priority should therefore be efficiency, not a larger scoring average. That improvement begins with shot quality. Wembanyama's uniqueness encourages difficult jumpers because he can make shots that almost no other player should attempt. But the finals showed the danger of depending on that ability. When the three-pointer stopped falling, too many possessions began far from the basket and ended without forcing New York's defense to collapse. San Antonio can respond by establishing him deeper, using quicker seals before help arrives, and involving him in more pick-and-roll actions with De'Aaron Fox. A screen involving Fox and Wemby forces the defense to choose between Fox's speed, Victor's roll, and the possibility of a pop beyond the arc. Wembanyama does not have to abandon perimeter shooting. He has to make the perimeter shot one option inside a larger sequence, rather than the possession's automatic conclusion. But better scoring locations solve only part of the problem. The second adjustment is faster playmaking when the second defender arrives. New York's pressure often succeeded before Wembanyama even attempted a shot because it forced him to hold the ball, search for an angle, and allow the defense to recover. He averaged 2.6 assists and 2.6 turnovers in the series, a balanced number that illustrates how little passing value San Antonio consistently created from all the attention he received. The next version of Wemby must recognize the help earlier and turn double teams into advantages for Fox, Stephon Castle, Harper, Devin Vassell, and the weak side shooters. If he can deliver the first pass quickly, the Spurs can attack 4-on-3 before New York's structure resets. That would make Wembanyama more dangerous without requiring another shot. If this breakdown helps, leave a like and subscribe. The toughest adjustment comes next. The third adjustment is physical preparation for a workload the regular season could not fully simulate. Wembanyama averaged only 29.2 minutes during the season, but that number jumped to 39.7 in the finals. 10 additional minutes against a defense built specifically to exhaust him changes the quality of every movement. Screens become harder to escape, deep position becomes harder to hold, and a clean jumper in the first quarter can become a short attempt in the fourth. This does not mean Victor needs to transform into a traditional heavyweight center or sacrifice the mobility that makes him special. It means his conditioning, lower body strength, balance, and recovery must support championship minutes. McGrady's prediction will be tested there first. Motivation may bring Wemby into the gym, but preparation must allow his decision-making and technique to survive when fatigue removes the easiest options. That is the advantage of reaching the finals at 22. Wembanyama received a compressed education that most young stars spend years trying to access. LeBron James reached the finals at the same age in 2007 and was overwhelmed by a more experienced San Antonio team before eventually developing the counters required to win championships. Magic Johnson experienced the stage even earlier and succeeded immediately, but his example still demonstrates how quickly postseason responsibility can accelerate a rare player's development. These comparisons do not guarantee Wembanyama will follow either career. Early exposure matters only if the player studies it honestly. Victor now knows how defenses change across a series, how small mistakes become decisive, and how different the game feels when 40 minutes are played under championship pressure. The most relevant example, however, belongs to the Spurs themselves. San Antonio has already shown how finals heartbreak can become a championship blueprint. In 2013, the Spurs came within seconds of defeating Miami before watching the title escape in one of the most painful losses in league history. They returned in 2014 and did not respond by asking one star to rescue every possession. They responded with sharper decisions, constant movement, trust, and a system that made the entire group more difficult to defend. The result was a 5-game championship victory and one of the clearest examples of collective basketball the NBA has seen. That history matters for Wembanyama because revenge cannot be reduced to him averaging 5 more points. His greatest leap would be making every teammate more dangerous while becoming more efficient himself. That is how personal disappointment becomes organizational improvement, and it explains why San Antonio's young supporting cast is just as important as Victor's offseason. The Spurs do not need Wembanyama to carry the entire response alone. Fox can provide the downhill pressure that prevents defenses from loading every body toward Victor. Castle can continue developing as a physical creator and defender. Harper can give San Antonio another ball handler capable of attacking a rotating defense instead of asking Wemby to create every advantage. Vassell and the team shooters must punish help consistently, while the front court depth must protect Victor from unnecessary regular season wear. The pieces create several possible solutions, but Mitch Johnson must define how they connect. If too many players take turns attacking independently, the Spurs can reproduce the same late-game stagnation that New York exposed. If Wembanyama becomes the center of a connected system, his gravity can control possessions, even on nights when he does not lead the team in attempts. That opportunity is rare because recent finals losers have struggled to complete the return journey. No team that lost the championship series earlier in the 2020s came back to win the title the very next season. Boston lost in 2022 and eventually won in 2024, demonstrating that finals pain can help build a champion, but also that the correction may require more than 1 year. Rosters change, injuries interfere, competitors improve, and the emotional energy of revenge eventually has to become repeatable basketball. San Antonio will face the same challenge in a Western Conference filled with teams designed to pressure young creators. Reaching the finals once does not reserve a place in the next one. It simply gives the Spurs better information about the distance that remains. The danger is believing disappointment automatically guarantees growth. Pain only becomes useful when it produces specific changes. Wembanyama can return angrier, and still encounter the same problems if his shot selection, passing speed, and late-game endurance remain unchanged. San Antonio can also add talent and still fall short if the rotation does not create clear roles around its franchise player. The league will spend the offseason studying how New York defended Victor, where the Spurs' spacing broke down, and which actions became predictable under pressure. Every opponent will attempt to reproduce those conditions. That means Wemby's fourth season cannot simply be a louder version of his third. He needs counters that punish the very coverage that ended San Antonio's run. This is where McGrady's prediction becomes measurable, not through off-season workout clips, but through the decisions Victor makes when the same defensive questions return. A dominant 2026-27 season would therefore look different from a collection of larger numbers. Wembanyama already averaged 25 points, 11.5 rebounds, and a league-leading 3.1 blocks while winning Defensive Player of the Year and helping San Antonio win 62 games. The statistical foundation is already at a championship level. The next leap is turning that dominance into a more stable offense, restoring his efficiency when defenses become physical, creating easier attempts for teammates, reducing empty late-game possessions, and maintaining the same defensive influence under a heavier workload. If those changes arrive, the Spurs will not need Victor to chase every individual award for McGrady's prediction to be correct. The evidence will appear in close games, where San Antonio converts leads instead of surrendering them, and Wemby controls the outcome even when his jumper is not falling. The consequences extend beyond one season. Wembanyama has already committed to San Antonio on a long-term extension and accepted a contract structure designed to preserve more flexibility for the roster around him. The organization has responded by building around Fox, Castle, Harper, and a deeper collection of complementary players. That creates a real championship window, but it also raises the standard. The Spurs are no longer celebrating progress simply because their young core reached the postseason. They have experienced the finals, identified the difference between competing and closing, and now must prove they can convert that knowledge into another run. Victor's response will establish the emotional and competitive standard for everyone else. Before declaring him ready to dominate, though, the final lesson must be stated clearly. Tracy McGrady is right that the finals can push Wembanyama to another level, but disappointment alone is not the reason. The prediction is believable because the loss exposed correctable problems rather than a lack of championship talent. Victor produced 26 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.6 blocks, yet learned that elite numbers cannot replace efficient shot selection, immediate reads against pressure, and physical control through 40 demanding minutes. If he corrects those three areas, San Antonio can follow the same principle that transformed its 2013 heartbreak into the 2014 championship, turn pain into precision, and turn individual motivation into better team basketball. Wemby does not need to prove he belongs on the final stage. He needs to prove he can control it. And if you want to understand how seriously he is protecting that championship window, watch our breakdown of why Wembanyama left roughly $50 million on the table in his new Spurs extension.